Simplifiers is the podcast that cuts through the complexity of digital transformation to reveal what works. Created by Soltech, hosted by Amel Gaily, and built for anyone who believes clarity beats complexity every time. In this episode, transformation advisor Sacha Helfenstein joins Amel Gaily to explore why digital transformations often fail and what can be done differently. With real stories and sharp insights, they examine the real reasons behind failure and how to keep complex projects on track. Also joining, Juhana Ovaska, IT manager from Anora.
Welcome to Simplifiers, the podcast where we make sense of the complex world of digital business. Welcome, Sacha.
Thank you very much, Amel, for having me here.
Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you end up where you are now?
First of all, I'm Swiss. So I ended up in Finland due to my wife finding me 26 years ago in St. Petersburg, of all places. So maybe I was one of the first immigrants that was infiltrated through Russia into Finland at that wave. We have nowadays 2 kids. We live in Jyväskylä. And trivia is I'm a psychologist. So maybe the almost bigger step than moving to Finland from Switzerland is moving into the IT world as a psychologist. At least that's not what I was thinking will happen when I started my studies. But in hindsight, it really makes sense because I was really interested in how to shape environments to make them human-friendly. The same applies for digital environments, be that in our private life, in smart homes, be that in traffic, be that in schools, where nowadays they use a lot of technology, or then business solutions. So I was getting quite fascinated about business solutions and how to help businesses transform and make use of technology and IT. And that's how I'm in my current position as an advisor in that space.
Very, very interesting. As you said, it's not a typical background, but it makes perfect sense.
Yes. Although I must admit, Amel, I was traveling here and I was thinking, how did I end up the guy that gets invited when one wants to talk about failed transformations? But let's find out.
True. Well said. Well, let's kick off with trying to understand what do we really mean when we talk about failure in digital transformation. So in your experience, when a transformation, so to say, fails, what does that actually look like on the ground?
First, let's stop for 1 minute about what even is a transformation. So we're not talking here now about implementing a single campaign or putting up a landing page or something. So we're talking about something that's much more complex, much more process, long duration, something transforming. So taking a business from one form to another form, that's a transformation. Along that path, a lot of complexity is involved, a lot of things that are unpredictable, not foreseen, a lot of learning and so forth. So that's what we talk about. In the same sense, then a failure is not that your site crashes or you have a blackout or orders don't go through at the moment. It's something much more subtle. It's somehow the whole mission is starting to derail or it's kind of fading away. Usually what we see is that the project, if it's kind of in a project mode, is moving into this kind of micromanagement mode where we're really only occupied with tickets and technical issues and looking at release dates, and kind of the bigger picture is kind of disappearing in the background. The purpose of why we actually even are in that process together is kind of vanishing. And then you also see kind of from our point of view, on the customer side, kind of the group of people that you have contact with is getting smaller and smaller. So your reach into the organization and kind of the touch of the organization is getting narrower or shallower.
Interesting. Are we sometimes too quick to call something a success just because it's launched?
That as well. Of course, you have these milestones that you get live with certain systems. And there is probably a little bit a misconception or kind of a misfocus also on the provider side, that we're very focused on delivering what has been agreed on the technical side. And then we kind of hand over and we say, have fun.
Yeah.
But business is not necessarily ready to have fun. So they need support. They need to kind of adopt this solution. They need to integrate that into their business model. So making a solution business ready is something different from making it technically ready.
Joining me today is Juhana Ovaska. From your point of view and from your long experience, what does failure mean in digital transformation?
Well, there are, of course, multiple definitions what it can be, but from my own experience, it often culminates in the things like not being able to do the change management as well as you're supposed to. So after completing the projects, how to onboard the existing stakeholders and the users and the customers in a way that it's convenient for everybody, and also the processes and the overall how the change is communicated within your organization and outside the organization. So that's one of the big failures you can have, or well, not big, but partial failures you can have in your projects.
Yeah, I want to grab onto what you said about communications, because I think a big role when it comes to any kind of transformation is expectation management. So from your point of view, specifically if we think about expectation management towards management, what kind of role does that play? And does failure sometimes correlate actually not to actual failure, but just to failure of meeting expectations?
Yeah, it's of course a big part of that, and how to make a concise communication to EM team members, that the management team members, that what are we actually going to do and what the results will be. So that's something that needs to be on point and really refined in a way that everybody knows the expectations from top to bottom levels, and then actually measuring those KPIs and delivering those reports. So if there's any like miscommunications there, or it's not measured as you were promising, then that's a failure.
Do you think we sometimes in business like to categorize things as binary, a failure or a success, rather than seeing that actually there may be quite a bit of shades in between?
Definitely. I mean, simplifiers.
Yeah.
And the more you move up in management, and usually that's what you do when you talk to the actual buyers or the steering participants to projects, they want to have simple answers. They want to put simple requests there, but the process of a transformation is very complex.
Exactly.
It has so many angles. You need to actually talk to the people that really own very nifty details of the processes, but then the reporting side, when they just have 5 minutes to listen, is it on track or not? They want their traffic lights, right?
Exactly.
And that usually, red can mean many things, but to them red just means bad.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not always like that.
That's true. That's true. And also what you mentioned about a project perhaps being technically ready or technically green in this scenario, is it always so then aligned strategically?
No. Actually, we just this week have a phase going on, which is quite difficult with one of the customers. And it's an interesting one where I was personally now for many years deeply involved. Maybe if we simplify, you have these 2 layers. You have kind of the project performance, all the project metrics around the budget. Are we on budget, overrunning, and so forth? Are we on schedule? How the resourcing goes, how is the scope coming along, and those are important metrics. Now, in that case, that was all red. But then the digital transformation, the strategic achievements, the business was after those goals, we actually all the time achieved those. Still, okay, we were always a little bit late, it was a little bit too much escalations to get there, but we actually achieved those. You can also have the vice versa. Unfortunately, I'm seeing more of the vice versa. The project is doing quite okay, but somehow we're not getting the value out of the transformation, or our customers are not getting the value out of the transformation, at least from my point of view, because I want to fight for them to get that impact that they were actually turning to us as a partner. So both levels are important, and we should keep sight on both levels. And typically the project is the one especially the IT project, the technical project, is somehow the one that steals too much focus the longer you go into the through the transformation. In the beginning, there's a lot of this big talk about all kind of the dreams and the hopes you have and the strategy, but then it kind of narrows down to the technical part.
Exactly. It's a really, really important point. Well, when we talk about transformation, ultimately we're talking about change, right?
Yes.
And as we know, and you even more as a psychologist, people struggle with change.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about why organizations struggle with change internally. So from your perspective, what are some typical blockers inside an organization that you see when it comes to transformation and change?
Yes, we're actually talking about change of complex systems. So as you say, or as we will discuss now in a minute, that's also the organization, the operational processes, the people, their roles, the teams, the competence they have there. It's the IT, it's their business model, it's the offering, it's the interaction with stakeholders and customer. So it's a system, it's a very complex system. It has a lot of variables. The organization is one variable. From our point of view as a provider, as a change agent, the organization is one of the key resources we have. But it's also the one that we usually have the most difficulty to get hold on. So most projects that have difficulties, usually on our side, they're shown that the organization we work with, the customer organization, there is not a broad enough buy-in. There is not broad enough sponsorship. People are not available to us when we need them. And it's quite obvious why that is so, because my main work is to do nothing else than transformation projects. Their main work is to run the business. And on the side, they have these kind of projects going on that is, for some businesses, they really reserve enough resources and attention, and other businesses, they think it's kind of a hobby on the side going on. Especially for those people that we really need to have frequently at the table, which are the business owners. Of course, the IT people, they kind of collaborate with us because we have releases, and on that level, there is interaction. We need the business owners at the table and to keep them engaged.
Yeah. How do internal structures like budgets from different silos or ownership, how do they impact project progress?
Well, first of all, that organization has a lot of different departments, and usually every organization is already all the time struggling themselves in making sense of their organization and breaking silos and so forth. There's a few kind of pre-signals that are kind of warning signals coming at early stages. Usually when I'm talking at early stages to one of the people that is kind of a contact person for initiating the project with us or the collaboration with us, when they say things like, my team completely knows why we need this, but my superior is not yet quite on board. Red lamp. Or we need to work together with that team, but actually we don't have a history of working together with that team. Red lamp. So then we start to realize that actually what they want to do is not to drive a transformation project with the organizational resources, but they want to implement the project, and as a sidekick, they want this to facilitate their organizational change. And that's quite a big thing to carry on your shoulder as a provider. And sometimes we do underestimate kind of those factors. Then you have, there's a lot of talk about customer journeys and unifying the experience and these things. But typically the way that is structured in our customer organizations is per silo. So they own very different envelopes of that kind of internal budget. So you see business cases that usually drive also the investment into such projects where you work with product management, and they have all kind of vision that once we have this new channel, we will sell so much more products and this and that. But nobody thinks about what's going to happen to the customer service in the call center and how many calls are going to up there, because that's another budget. We don't care about that one. But their customers, they don't see those silos, so they interact with the business with all the channels. So this kind of fragmentation is something that we see quite often. And sorry if I continue still on one level.
Yeah.
The most fascinating projects, I think, are the global ones.
Yeah.
So enterprises that are operating in many markets.
Yeah.
Now, those group projects are usually carried by the vision that we want to unify us across countries. We want to standardize things because that brings a lot of return on investment from them. But then you have very different countries. You have the innovators and you have those that kind of are running very simple solutions. Yeah. What will usually happen is that after a while, the innovators think, oh, now we are chained to this standardization and our money is just being used to lift up all the other countries. They start to go rogue. And then the transformation momentum breaks apart.
Yeah. Really, really interesting. And thank you for sharing concrete examples. I think they're very enlightening. Something that came to mind is also, how much do you see when we think of kind of the struggle within organizations, that it's about either lack of collaboration or lack of culture, maybe to a certain point, but how much do you see also just outright resistance?
That as well. I mean, as I said, for our customers' organizations, the people they're in and the functions they have, this project is not their core business. Yeah. Their core business is about their function, their budget, their career, their CV. So there's a lot of people that feel negatively impacted by even positive transformation projects.
Exactly.
Even, I mean, some of the transformation projects, they have clear targets like getting rid of customer service. So if you're the head of customer service, because
fair
I mean,
enough.
Maybe to explain, because you want to move everything to self-service channels. So you don't want to have this kind of expensive channels anymore.
Yeah.
So there is always these promoters and detractors. And that's one kind of an approach of advisory as well, to help identify the promoters and the detractors and to manage those.
Yeah.
But again, we are there in a political sphere where we don't always have the actual mandate. We're not even really accepted, because even from the customer point of view, they might want us as the digital provider and not as their organizational change agent. But we definitely see that those are the things
exactly
we need to take in our hand.
Exactly. Well, let's move on to talk a little bit about contracts and maybe even kind of the contract contradiction, if I were to put it that way. So from your point of view, how does the contracting model get in the way of transformation?
Yeah, that's kind of an aha experience I had over the years, because I mean, transformation is a buzzword that has been around for a long time, and the whole slogan about 70 to 80% of all the transformations fail that has been put out by industry analysts probably 10 years ago. People were starting to think, why do they fail? What can we do differently? And one of the focuses was, for instance, that a lot of the big transformation projects, they tried to pre-specify the end state of a solution way too early. So you have these like huge so-called RFP monsters, so requests for proposals with thousands of lines of all the requirements that we want to implement in 3 years. That's not humane.
Yeah.
Like, nobody can predict the future over 3 years in every single process and how it should work and so forth. So we were starting to move in the same direction that I think also other disciplines, like the design discipline, need to be more agile. It need to be more iterative. There need to be space for flexibility and learning and making sense and problem solving. And I think we're all on the same page with that. Then you have the contracts, and they're kind of these antique monsters, because the contract, all it wants to do, at least in its current fashion and its traditional fashion, is to exclude any unpredictability, any uncertainty, to make everything kind of black and white and sanctionable from that point of view. So you have on one side this kind of need for flexibility, learning, for uncertainty, for being friendly to yourself. Yeah. And then you have the contract on the other side that strangles you. And usually the contract is not built against kind of the purpose of why we're here, or what is the outcome we want to, the result we want to achieve, but it's very much based on what is the statement of work, what is the scopement of work, what will you do, what will you deliver, and later you can be held accountable against that. Although you realize across the way that maybe what we thought originally, it didn't make sense after all. It wasn't even possible, or it was way too complex, and we underestimated the effort it needed. But again, going back to simplifiers, going back to the top management, they want to have something to kind of limit their risks, right? But you need to embrace risk if you want to go through transformation together.
Would you agree with my thinking here that many companies say they want to be agile, they want to describe themselves as agile companies, but still yet they sign waterfall style contracts?
Yes, definitely. So we even now especially see that trend that businesses are getting very risk averse. It takes them a lot of effort to make a decision in a world that already imposes even more uncertainty. Waterfall is much safer for them. So it's it's a fact. And the contracts are lagging behind in that sense, behind the philosophy of transformation. And somehow we're going back to that age right now that I've seen.
Interesting. Do you see trust having a role in kind of any of this?
Oh, of course. I think everybody immediately agrees, and it's always kind of this one big word that is put out there. It's a trust business, and it is. But of course, me being a psychologist, let's open up this trust a little bit. What does trust actually mean? So one definition of trust is how much you can rely on some other party to do what they promised. So how predictable it is for you that what that party will do, say, what the result of your collaboration will be is what you expected. Now, it's very understandable that if in a relationship the trust level sinks, that means more and more you're not able to predict what the other party is doing. That is not only difficult in the sense of maybe not getting what you want, but you might actually get it in a different form or too late or whatever, or it costs you more. The biggest issue actually is the complexity that it introduces. You have a variable that you don't know how it will spin. And businesses, as we now said a few times, they're already complex. So they need to reduce complexity. If they have a collaboration partner that they all the time don't know what is going to happen next, will they release, will they not, what will be the quality, that introduces complexity to them in their system. And that might have chain reactions because they maybe already promised to another partner that, on that date, we will get this, and then you can start doing your next task and so forth. So all of that chain reaction is happening. So what I'm seeing is often it's not the trust that, for instance, we as a provider wouldn't deliver what we said, but it's kind of the uncertainty of when exactly we will deliver, how we will deliver, and so forth. And there's some simple mechanism you can alleviate this. Communicate. Be honest. Say it early enough. But then come again this kind of contractual things in. That we have internal discussion that can we say this already or not, and so forth, and we will get penalized immediately. Looking back, in most projects would have been better just to be immediately open and honest and communicate and help our customers to deal with kind of the adjustments that things need. So trust is definitely, I would say trust is the primary and ultimate resource of any collaboration.
Complexity. We've already spoken about it quite a bit, and it's a huge word. But you've also introduced a very powerful metaphor describing horizontal versus vertical scope and horizontal versus vertical complexity. So can you explain that a little bit?
Actually, it's very simple. At least I hope it's very simple. Going back to the maybe scope of work discussion. So stating what are the deliverables, what requirements should be met by the new system, whatnot. To put it very simple, usually those are bullet points or lines in an Excel or in a table. So it has maybe 100 lines. And that's kind of then what management says, yes, that's what we want you to deliver to us with that budget and that time frame. That is what I call the horizontal scope. It's kind of the width of the scope. So we can go through it, and on line 97, it says, this page needs to have that button. Okay, it's that button. But then the problem now comes with diving into that one item of the horizontal scope. So now you dive into the vertical of that button.
Yeah.
In one customer case, it can be that we start to discuss, okay, what's the button doing? Oh, it's very simple. It's just anybody can click on it and it redirects you to this other page. All right, that makes sense. Okay. With another customer is, oh yeah, it's this button. We have that like for many years. So it appears only to some segments, some parts of the day. And when they click on it, it will redirect them to different pages depending on their profile and what they have ordered in the last 2 weeks under the certain condition, that blah, 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 blah. And then you start to realize, oh my God, that kind of what you now uncover under this one line. So if you start to dive into the vertical scope, the complexity of this one item, it's much bigger.
Yeah.
The problem is when you then come back again to top management, the steering committee, and said, oh, scope is much bigger, we realized. And they say, no, it's still this button.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this one line. In the horizontal scope, it's this one line.
Exactly.
Now, some viewers, listeners might say, okay, but then you didn't do your homework. You should have studied it more. You should have done more analysis, background, and so forth. That's true. But that means you're already in the project. You're already starting to do that requirements elicitation. You're already doing the design work. So basically, you're already in these phases that basically, as per contract, you should already get paid. Yes. So now we can introduce contractual models that can maybe have checkpoints along the way, right? So we can adapt. And that is usually what we do. But your leverage to move the budget is not infinite. And it's usually a little bit less than the complexity you have now discovered.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And also, there is not the single point that now we know. Or actually, there is the single point that I know exactly how much it cost, how complex it was, and how long it took. And you know when that is?
After.
Yeah. Then I know it.
Exactly. Hindsight is always
Yes.
an easier viewpoint.
Exactly. So even after design phase, even if it's very detailed, once you start to implement it with whatever technology you implemented, you still uncover new things.
Yeah.
Once I implemented this button for this complex customer, at some stage I will still realize, okay, but now where do we get this segment information from? Oh, do you have this integration? No, we don't have this integration. It's the guy that does it manually until now. Like, yeah, but that's not how you know.
I do. I like this button example because it's so concrete. But the word going in my mind at the moment is why. I'm not sure if this is a easy question to answer, but I'm going to fire away anyway. So why do we end up in those situations? Why do projects often underestimate how deep this one single requirement can go?
Certain just humane constraints. You don't have access maybe to the people that actually know the detail.
Okay.
So usually the people that we interact first with, they have some understanding of the business. And then the people that actually want to are the buyers. Again, they are sitting in higher management, so they only know about the button.
Sure.
Then we find at some stage, Peter somewhere actually knows everything about the button, but he's not available at the earlier time because, of course, we cannot talk to everybody. So that's one of the reasons. So top management doesn't even know the complexity, right? They want to see things simpler, simple answers, because another reason is if I come in as a provider and answer to an RFP and say, oh, dear buyer, we don't know this at the moment. So can we just leave it at the moment blank? Very honest answer. For sure, there is a competitor next to us that says, oh, we know everything. It's going to take 2 months and it's almost cost you nothing.
Exactly.
And then, oh, that's interesting. We'll probably take the other one. So there's a lot of kind of really trivial reasons why it is so.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. And I think it's important to think that, or also bear in mind that client-vendor relationships don't happen in a vacuum. There are other vendors.
There are other
clients abroad.
There are competitors. On that point. Actually, incidentally, I just had a discussion yesterday with a new colleague that joined us a couple of weeks back. She was pondering on her first experiences in Soltec, meeting us, and what could be kind of value points we have for the market. And completely, I don't think it's coming from the shelf, but talking to people, she found that we're honest. We have honesty. And that's like a counter trend in today's world, Trumpistic world we live. But I think that's something we should try to use. Maybe we'll lose some cases or not win some cases by being honest. But again, we're here to talk about failed transformation. We're talking about trust. I think honesty will probably take us further on the trust scale than not being honest.
I want to dive into that a little bit more, talk a little bit more about trust. So do you see more trust issues between client and vendor, or perhaps within the client team itself? So it's not always just an issue about trust between the client and vendor.
I don't know more or less, but both are there as a phenomenon. One thing that, of course, we see is that usually we have this one team, or actually it often gets down to one person that is kind of the key ally and the key kind of spokesperson for us within the organization. So it's the same person often that already helped selling the project into the organization and the collaboration into the organization. Now that person is, of course, in a dual trust space towards us, but then there's always a lot of people that kind of doubt his choices, his recommendations. As we said earlier, there's conflicts. There's people that have different interests in their career or for their position. So he's in this kind of tension space. And the better we can make his or her life to maintain trust together and kind of cohesion within the organization, of course, the better that person will be off. I think when tough times come around, it's for that person easier to throw the kind of the provider under the bus and change, because that's easier and safer to say up to the board that, okay, up to here it was okay, or we made a bad choice and we change. I think as a psychologist, and not only as a provider, often they would be better off sticking through the tough times with the provider. Of course, there is situations you need to change, definitely. I mean, if we take a marriage, if you have a really violent marriage, there's an end to things. But just having difficult times, getting divorced, we know now that people that stick in their marriages tend to be happier in the end than those that switch all the time. They might have many happy faces in series, not being a
marriage
counselor at the moment, but there's much research that suggests that. So, and I think it applies to any cooperation relationship.
So how does Anora choose their digital partners?
We have a measuring system. We have a point system that we use. If we take ourselves, so if we want to take a new partner, for example, or if we want to, compare existing partners, for example. So those are things that we have a point system for. We do internal evaluation, or we use a third-party vendor to help with us in the evaluation processes. We do some market research, then what we are trying to achieve. And after giving out all the points in different categories, then we also have the most important field after in the end, and that's gut feeling. We need to find the correct fit. But yeah, giving out points and then measuring, especially things like is the partner, is the supplier the correct size for us? We are not the biggest company, nor the smallest company. We are very medium sized. So getting too small or a too big vendor can be a risk. So absolutely, there are multiple weightings that we do and give out there. But yeah, we give points and we keep track of them.
Very interesting. And how do you share responsibility? So is there kind of a general response that you could say when and where is it the partner's responsibility, and do they bring value to bring responsibility, and what are the kind of the things where you have to have the responsibility yourself?
Of course, we know our business the best. So all the business decisions in a way that has the depth of our business knowledge has to come from us. But then best practices from across the field. We prefer suppliers and partners with extensive knowledge of the industry that we are working in. So we can establish and discuss best practices, and of course get ideas and involvement from the other, even from the other possible learning opportunities from the same industry. But the supplier plays a key role there. The partner plays a key role, so we can start the discussions. And of course, we very heavily trust on the partners' technical expertise on building this. But as the bond deepens and we do more and more together, then we also very heavily want supplier or the partner at that point to understand our business in a way that we take the suppliers people and take them to our factories and facilities and do the tours and have them talk about with the business people as much as possible, so they can also understand what are we actually doing, what are we striving for, what's the strategy. And when that's deep enough, we can give more and more reins to the supplier also.
Very, very interesting and makes total sense. So in a way, would it be fair to say that you see the role of a kind of a transformation partner evolving from a supplier to something more of even a co-strategist in a way?
Absolutely. At least in sub strategies, in a way that not, of course, the whole company strategy comes from the EMT, but absolutely when defining our digital strategy, how to grow with e-commerce, lifestyle sites, what to do with AI, product management, all that kind of stuff. We absolutely rely and trust our suppliers, partners at that point, to do the strategies and see the roadmap with us into the future.
We're starting to wrap up a little bit, but I want to talk about kind of warning signs of a failing transformation. What are some things maybe our listeners can be on the lookout for, be they from the client perspective or from the vendor perspective? So from your experience, what are the early indicators you can watch for?
Some we already talked to. So you start to lose some of the people you need to have engaged. Quite often it's the business owners that somehow get under the pretense of I'm occupied and I'm busy and so forth. They're not anymore there with you. So that means typically they have already kind of retired from the whole transformation, and they were usually kind of the whole initiator of the transformation, because usually it's about the business transformation, or they're already working on a plan B. They might already have had a plan B from the beginning on, but they're now actively working on a plan B. Another thing is that very concretely, we sometimes see that the business owners come back with a requirement list, and the requirement list start to look like all the legacy processes and features they had. So now they only want to hold on to what they had earlier. They don't want to get lost, lose anything. Because one thing, it's not exactly the answer to your question, but I want to take a sidestep. We need to understand there's kind of two big personas, or kind of two big power centers. There's kind of the buyer of your project, the economic buyer that owns the budget and everything, and then there's these business owners. And the business owners, they are in a dissonant situation. Somehow they want the change, but they have to make money throughout the change in their business, so they cannot get that business getting disrupted. So they are in a difficult situation. Other thing I think we have pointed out earlier, that are signals you should pay close attention to, is that when you find yourself all the time only discussing tickets and technical issues and so forth, so you need to reserve time to discuss about where we are in our journey. You need to have this discussion over and over again. I think those are kind of, from the top of my head, the most clear indication. You lose stakeholders, you lose the ones that you should have at the table with you, and you're too much on the micro level, on the project level, instead of the overall impact.
Do you see that momentum has a role?
Definitely. I mean, it sucks out the momentum when you're only talking about projects, usually then the contract is coming in. It sucks out the spirit of the transformation.
Exactly. When you start hearing more about the contract again, that's a clear sign as well. Any final tips or hints?
Definitely, we were on the right track when we started to figure out that, okay, let's not pre-specify these monsters. Do aim for the first single value use case that you can implement that will make the users actually say, now I already have a reason to log into this system because it already provides me some value. Because often we think, oh, and now where we added, let's also do this and that and that and that and that. That's not even necessary. If they already want to onboard to your future solution, you have them there. Then you can grow. And we know that from all our kind of private lives, WhatsApps and Facebook, they all the time come with new features. But you want to have this first value feature. Why you even think this is valuable for me? That's definitely one of the tips. Then make sure the contract leaves you space, be adapted over time, have some mechanisms there to review the contracts. I think that's the biggest problem we need to solve with especially the legal departments, because they're usually only there to minimize the risks, right? And these kind of things that are kind of in conflict with a lot of the philosophy of how transformations should be run. Pay attention to the soft parts. Have meetings where you say, okay, now things are not clear for us. We don't know. It's not just a signal of weaknesses. It's a signal of honesty. It's a signal that you want to solve problems. Don't lose vision. Communicate, use, for instance, keep in mind that there is a certain group of people that are close to the project, that know what's going on, why we're doing this. There's other people that kind of zoom in twice a year. You need to have more than just kind of huge PowerPoints that have a lot of text and project dashboards and so forth. You need to have something that's visual. So we often use prototypes to visualize what's actually happening. How does that look like? What will be the experience? So you need these kind of communicative instruments. And finally, try to focus always on what is the outcome, what is the kind of the business targets, the goals, the KPIs you want to follow throughout your project. And after the project, again, it's not only the technical readiness, business readiness. So focus on that. Don't pay too much only attention to the original lists, which is the scope of work. So what should be done, but why are we here?
Very, very well said. Thank you so much for this conversation. It's been honest, refreshingly grounded, and I think extremely insightful.
Thank you again, Amel, for having me, and looking forward for you to invite me again when we talk about how transformation succeed.
That's true. We need a part 2. Definitely. Now, if you're listening and planning or currently perhaps leading a digital transformation, I hope today's episode has helped you reframe what success really looks like. Because it's not about delivering on paper. It's about delivering real value with clarity, alignment, and with the right people in place. This was Simplifiers, brought to you by Saltec. And if you found this useful, please share it with a colleague, subscribe, and join us next time. Until then, keep simplifying your digital world.
Thanks for listening. To learn more about Saltec and how they help simplify digital transformation, visit their website, www.saltec.com. Simplifiers is produced in partnership with Saltec by Here Media.